Chosen one, I want to speak to the years, not to what is coming for you, to the years that have already happened. If there is noise around you right now, I want to ask you to bring it down, not because this message is fragile, because what I am about to say was not built to be half heard. This moment found you for a reason, and it deserves your full presence. You have been carrying something for a long time. You have prayed in seasons where the silence was so thick and so complete that you began to wonder if your words were reaching anywhere at all. You have kept going when continuing forward made no visible sense. You have shown up for others while running quietly, near empty yourself, choosing the harder road, not because it looked better, but because something deep in you would not allow you to take the easier one, even when that something felt very small and very tired. And today, without dramatic announcement, something in you has shifted, quietly, internally. Something has turned a corner that years of wilderness could not force, and no one around you could have manufactured for you. You arrived at it through the long road, through the faithful years, through the private choices and the silent mornings and the moments of grace you accepted even when you did not feel worthy of them. I want to tell you what heaven feels about that turning, because what has been placed on my heart to bring to you today is not a preview of what is coming. It is something rarer. It is a report from heaven about right now, about the years behind you, and about what God actually feels when He looks at you in this exact moment. These words were pressed onto my heart to bring to you. I am not speaking from a place of perfection or claiming any authority above yours. I am only sharing what the Spirit has been showing me, and what I believe, with everything in me, was meant to reach you at this specific hour. Everything I am about to share with you is offered freely. But if at any point something stirs in your spirit toward more, you will find what you need in the description and in the pinned comment below. Only if you feel led to look. Before we go any further, I want to tell you what is waiting for you in this message, because I do not want you to leave before you receive all of it. Stay until the end. Today I am going to walk you through 6 specific signs that confirm whether you are in the moment the Spirit calls you. Finally get it. I am going to share a word from the original Greek of Scripture that completely changes what you have been calling delay or confusion. I am going to give you a real, practical method for reading the years of your life differently, one that reveals what was always there. And before we close, I am going to tell you plainly and honestly what God has actually been feeling about you through all of those years. Do not leave before you receive all of it. Let me begin with something simple. Let me describe a moment. Imagine a quiet evening, the kind where everything that needed doing has been done and the noise of the day has finally settled. You are near a window, and outside it is raining softly. You can hear it against the glass. You can see the light from the room, reflecting on the wet surface outside, and beyond it the city is blurred and distant and far away. And you are not thinking about anything in particular, not rehearsing conversations, not running through your list, just standing there at the window, watching the rain fall. And in that stillness, you notice something. It is not dramatic. There is no overwhelming flood of feeling, just a difference. Something inside you is settled, like a room that was rearranged while you were looking the other way. Like the background noise that has lived in your mind for so long has lowered its volume just slightly, and in the space that opened, there is something that might, if you sat with it long enough, be called peace. If any part of that resonates with you, even at the edges, stay with me. The first sign is a quietness settling inside you that does not match your circumstances. The problems around you may not have resolved. The answers you have been waiting for may not have arrived. But something in your interior terrain is different. Not resignation, not exhaustion finally turning into numbness. Something that feels, quietly and almost unexpectedly, like arrival. Like something that has been waiting to land inside you has finally, gently, landed. The second sign is that you have stopped needing to explain yourself to people who were never going to understand your road anyway. There was a time when that need was consuming. defending your direction, justifying your choices, trying to translate your path into language that people who were not on it could accept. And somewhere in the recent past, without a clear decision point, without a dramatic confrontation, that effort has simply quieted, not out of bitterness, out of something that feels like a settled knowing, a recognition that your path does not require a jury. The third sign is that the hard years are beginning to carry a different kind of meaning. Where you once read those seasons and saw only cost, you are beginning to sense something that was being built. You cannot yet see the whole structure, but you can feel the weight of it beneath you. Something was being constructed in those years, specifically and precisely for what you were made to carry. And this is the place where I want to speak something directly into those years, because the years deserve to be addressed. Every morning you got up when everything inside and outside of you was saying stay down, you were doing something that heaven was watching. Every prayer you sent upward into what felt like sealed silence, trusting that something was receiving it, even when nothing confirmed that it was, you were building something real. Every time you chose the road that was harder and less celebrated because something in you simply knew it was right, you were leaving a mark in the unseen that nothing could erase. Every single act of faithfulness in the years when being faithful felt like the most irrational choice available to you. Not one of those moments was small. Not one of them was without a witness. The fourth sign is that something in you has stopped bracing for the next impact. I want to be honest about what I mean. I am not saying the hard things are over. What I am saying is that the way you are carrying the journey has changed. The constant tension, the low-level readiness for impact that became such a permanent fixture in your chest that it started to feel like your natural resting state, that has quieted. Not because the circumstances changed, because something in you has moved from endurance into trust. That shift did not happen overnight. It was built over the years, and it has arrived. The fifth sign is that specific words are finding you. Messages, passages, conversations that arrive with a precision that is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Something that addresses the exact thing you were sitting with at exactly the moment you needed it. That is not randomness. That is attunement. The frequency of your awareness has shifted, and things that were always there are now landing with a specificity they did not have before. The sixth sign is a growing pull towards stillness, away from noise, away from the exhausting performance of being what everyone around you expects. Something in you is increasingly uninterested in explaining itself, proving itself, or fitting into spaces that were never designed for who you actually are. That pull is not withdrawal, it is direction. It is your spirit moving toward what it genuinely needs. If you recognized yourself in 3 or more of those signs, this message was brought to you specifically, and I want to tell you what those signs mean, because they are the language of a turning that heaven has been watching for. They are evidence of something that has been happening inside you, quietly, for longer than you know. Before I tell you what heaven sees when it looks at that turning, let me tell you a story, not for the sake of history. To hold up a mirror. Before David was a king, before he was a general or a conqueror or a name that would echo through thousands of years, he was a shepherd boy in the fields. He woke up every morning and went out to the pastures and watched sheep. He protected them from predators. He played music alone in the open air, with no audience, no recognition, no external confirmation that any of it was worth anything. As far as the visible world was concerned, the fields were where the forgotten ones went. They were the end of a story, not the beginning. But here is what was happening in the unseen while David was in those fields. God was watching, not with impatience, not waiting for David to graduate to something more impressive or more visible. Watching with the specific and deliberate attention of someone who sees what the outer world has decided to overlook. When the prophet Samuel finally came to find the next king, he walked past every visible and credible candidate in the room. And the answer from God was not one of them. The one I have found is in the fields. David did not earn the calling through visible performance. The calling was already decided because of what God had been watching in the years of hiddenness. The years David spent in the fields were not preparation for the calling. The years in the fields were the calling. The formation was not the hallway before the room. The formation was the room itself. And what was being built in the silence of those fields, the faithfulness, the character, the capacity to carry weight without crumbling, that is what made David the person God described as someone after his own heart. Now I want to choose a word carefully, because the word matters here. What God was doing in the seasons of formation was not silence in the sense of absence. The silence from heaven in years of hidden faithfulness is not the same as the silence of an empty house. It is the silence of complete, undivided attention. The difference between a room that is empty and a room where someone is leaning forward, watching closely, not speaking because they do not want to interrupt what they are watching. The years you have called silent were not the years when heaven looked away. They were the years when heaven leaned in. And now I want to show you something from the original language of Scripture, something most people read right past, without realizing what it actually says. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, there is the story of a father and a son. The son goes out and loses everything, and at the lowest point of his life, the text in the original Greek says something the English translations have never quite captured. The moment of the son turning back toward home is described in the original Greek as the son coming into himself, not coming to his senses, not recognizing a mistake, coming into himself. A return to his own essential nature. The version of him that existed before all the wandering and the noise and the years of distance. He did not just have a new thought. He had a return to who he always was, underneath everything that had tried to rewrite him. And when the father saw that return beginning from a long way down the road, the text says the father ran, not walked, ran and wept. Not from relief that a problem was being resolved, from joy. From the sight of someone coming back to themselves. The response of the father to the moment his son finally got it was not a quiet nod. It was weeping and running, and a celebration the whole neighborhood could hear. That is what you finally get it means in the language of heaven. Not that you figured out the right formula. A return, a coming back into yourself. Into the version of you that existed before the years of noise told you to make yourself smaller, more manageable, easier for others to define. And when that return begins, the response of heaven is not indifference and not patient waiting and not a formal acknowledgement. It is happy tears running down a road. Now there is something I am going to return to in more depth when we continue. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake spent over 30 years studying what happens inside the human brain in the exact moment of this kind of return to one essential nature. He mapped what he calls a restoration sequence, a body of work that covers far more than I can show you today, because what he built is designed for the full arc of what the chosen one needs. Today I am only going to reveal the first piece of it, but I want you to know it exists. Because what he found connects directly to everything we have been discussing right now. Let me pause here for a moment. Wherever you are right now, just take one real breath. Slow and deliberate. Pause threes. Let what you just heard about David and about the Greek word settle somewhere beneath your thinking. You do not need to analyze it. Just let it land. What I am about to share when we continue is the reason everything we just built was necessary. What does God actually feel when he looks at the years you have walked? I am going to answer that, and the answer is going to change the way you read everything that came before. Do not leave before you hear it. Before we close this part of the message, I want to briefly mention something, the tool that Dr. Robert Lake created. The one connected to the neuroscience of exactly the kind of internal return we have been discussing. It has a name. It is called the Genius Song. I am going to explain it fully when we continue, because the context we are building now will make the meaning of it land completely differently. If your spirit is already moving toward more, before I return to it, the information is waiting in the description and in the pinned comment below. Only if you feel drawn. What is coming in the next part of this message is the reason this entire message was assembled. I am going to tell you what God actually said about you. Not what religion says in general. What God said about you. In the years, in the silence, in the faithful choosing, and what heaven has been feeling about you through all of it. Do not leave before you receive it. Welcome back, chosen one. If you are continuing from the first part of this message, what comes next is the reason everything before it was necessary. We have walked through the 6 signs. We have sat with David in the fields. We have explored the Greek word that tells us what you finally get it actually means at the level of essential nature. And now, I want to bring all of that into the one thing this message was assembled to carry. But before I do, there is one more layer I need you to have first. One more thing that does not just explain the years you have walked. Something that changes how you see yourself because of them. Stay with me, because this is the part that matters most. Here is what has been true in the unseen while you have been walking. What heaven offered as silence, you received as absence. But it was attention. The quiet from above in those hard seasons was not the silence of a God who was distracted or looking elsewhere. It was the concentrated stillness of someone completely absorbed in what was being formed in you. The kind of quiet that settles over a room when something delicate and important is happening and no one wants to break the air. What you called delay, heaven called development. Every moment you sat in the waiting space of your own life, wondering when something was finally going to move. Something was moving. In the interior, in the character, in the capacity to carry what was coming. Delay is what it looks like from one angle. Construction is what it was. What you called being left behind, heaven called being set apart. The gap between you and others who seemed to be receiving visible confirmations that you had not yet received was not evidence of losing. It was evidence that your road is different. And a different road does not compete. It serves a different destination. What you called wandering, heaven called navigation. Every detour, every unexpected turn, every season that looked like it was moving in the wrong direction, heaven was navigating, not aimlessly, with a precision that you did not yet have the altitude to see clearly. I want to pause on that, because what I just described is not theology, it is testimony. It is the account of what was actually happening in the years that from your perspective looked like nothing was happening. And now I want to tell you the response of heaven to the fact that something in you has finally arrived at the understanding of all of that, because the response is the entire point of this message. This is what I hear the Father saying over everything I just described. And I want to be careful here. I am not claiming to stand in the place of the divine or to speak as more than I am. I am sharing what has been pressed onto my heart with the most weight. What I believe with everything in me was meant to reach you today. What I hear the Father saying is this: I have been watching every step you took without knowing where you were going. Every silent morning where you chose to continue without a single confirmation. Every choice you made in private, in the moments no one else saw and no one else will ever fully know. I saw them all. And I want you to hear what I feel when I watch you. Not disappointment, not impatience, not a careful and measured approval that you still have to earn. I watch you with a joy that has been building for longer than you can measure, because of what you have been in the silence, in the invisible years, in the places where no one was counting but me. And today, that joy overflowed. I cried happy tears, not because you finally got it right, because you finally came back into yourself. And that, chosen one, is worth every single one of them. That is what the tears of heaven look like when they are tears of joy. Not sentimental, not general, specific, personal, yours. Now, I want to name something honestly. because I would not be serving you if I only told you the beautiful truth without addressing what tried to prevent you from receiving it. There has been a voice. If you have been on this road for any length of time, you know the one. It does not announce itself. It works quietly, and its favorite question is simple: did any of it actually matter? It is the whisper that says the years were random, that the faithfulness in the silence was not formation, just time passing, that the people who moved faster and received visible confirmations more quickly are proof that your road was wrong, because if it were right, there would be more evidence by now. That voice is not truth, but it is persist. And in the seasons when heaven was quietest, from your perspective, that voice had the most room to work. I also want to name what sits alongside that voice, a kind of spiritual dryness that does not feel like a crisis, not dramatic doubt, more like a fog. The sense of connection you once had has become slightly muffled, slightly harder to reach. You are functioning, showing up for what needs to be done, but no one around you can fully see what is happening on the inside, because from the outside, everything looks fine. That experience is real, and it is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of deep formation. And then there is the weight of comparison, watching others receive the visible confirmations you have been praying for, trying to hold the tension between believing you are on the right path and having very little external evidence to confirm it. Let me say something directly about that weight. It is not evidence that you are behind. It is evidence that your road is not the same as the road of someone else. A calling is not a race. An assignment does not compete with another assignment. Your path and the path of the person next to you are not parallel tracks moving at different speeds. They are entirely different roads, in service of entirely different purposes. Now I want to speak to the part of you that has changed without being able to explain why. The part of you that has become less available, less willing to spend yourself in spaces and conversations that leave you empty, less interested in the performance of who you used to be for people who expected that version of you, and the guilt that arrived with that, because people noticed, and it was easier for them to call it pulling away than to recognize it as growing forward. You are allowed to have changed. You are allowed to have outgrown the version of yourself that needed constant external validation in order to keep going. You are allowed to protect what has been built in you during the years of formation. You are allowed to not explain your becoming to everyone who did not witness the cost of it. And you are not behind. You are on a different road, and that road brought you here today. Now, I want to give you something practical, something that goes with you. The first thing I want to give you is what I call the gratitude archaeology practice. And I want to be specific about what this is, because it is not a list of things you are grateful for. That is a different exercise for a different purpose. This is an excavation, the practice of going back into a specific hard season of your life and looking for what was placed there that you were not able to recognize at the time. Choose one period, at least 3 months. Choose one of the genuinely hard ones, not a season you already look back on with warmth. The one that cost you something real. And within that period, I want you to look for 3 things. 3 specific moments, encounters, or small shifts that appeared during that season that felt minor or random at the time, but that, looking back now, you begin to sense were not random at all. 3 things that seem, in retrospect, to have been placed there deliberately. You do not have to force a spiritual conclusion. Just look. Let the evidence be what it is. Because what most people find when they do this is that the hardest season, the one that felt most like abandonment, is also the season most densely populated with evidence of attention. The hard parts were not where the presence was absent. They were where the presence was most concentrated. You have not been surviving the years. You have been becoming because of them, and those are not the same thing. The second thing I want to give you is a way to test whether what you are experiencing right now is a genuine internal arrival or a temporary emotional high, because they can feel similar from the inside, and the difference matters. The first indicator is longevity. Does the quality of quiet you are feeling stay with you after this message ends? Not as a memory of an idea, but as a felt reality in the days that follow. Emotional highs fade quickly. A genuine shift in the interior creates something that sustains. The second indicator is independence. Does this knowing need good circumstances to remain true? If things worsen tomorrow, does what you are feeling right now dissolve? Or is it stable underneath the changing conditions? A genuine knowing does not require a favorable weather report in order to stand. The third indicator is behavioral naturalness. Are you trying to act like someone who has arrived? Or have you simply noticed that you already behave differently in certain ways, not through effort or decision, but because something beneath the behavior shifted first, and the behavior changed as a result? That third one cannot be performed. Now let me tell you about someone. There was a woman, around 42 years old, who spent 6 years in what I can only describe as spiritual limbo. She was faithful in the ways she was able to be faithful. She kept going. But the sense of connection she had once known had become muffled. She prayed, she served, she showed up, and she received very little confirmation back. There was no dramatic moment when that changed, no overnight breakthrough, no visible sign that finally resolved everything. What happened was this. One ordinary morning, she woke up and noticed that the question marks that had lived inside her for 6 years had quietly become settled. She could not identify when the shift had happened, only that it had. She told one person, just one, and what she said was this: I stopped asking God to prove He was with me, and I started looking for the evidence of how He had already been with me. When I looked, she said, it was everywhere. I just had not been reading it right. That is what you finally get. It looks like from the outside. Quiet, ordinary morning light. Completely permanent. Let me pause here before we continue. Wherever you are right now, allow the weight of what you just heard to settle without needing to do anything with it immediately. Pause. 3S. You do not have to analyze or decide right now. Just let it be in you. What I want to share next brings all of this together. Receive it from a grounded and open place. Before I move forward, I want to consolidate what we have covered, because what comes next connects directly to it, and I want you standing on solid ground. One central idea runs through everything in this message. The years you walked in what felt like silence were not the years when heaven looked away. They were the years when heaven was leaning in. The 6 signs you recognized in yourself are not random. They are the indicators of a genuine return to who you have always been. The Greek word tells us that getting it is not an intellectual achievement. It is a coming back into essential nature. And David in the fields shows us that the formation in the hidden years was not the hallway before the purpose. The formation was the purpose itself. You now have a specific way to excavate the evidence from the hard seasons. You have a way to test whether what you are experiencing is lasting. And you know that the years you walked did not simply pass. They built something permanent in you. The person sitting with this message right now is the person those years were producing. And now I want to show you what connects all of this to what happens inside the brain during exactly this kind of return. Because what Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years studying explains not only why this shift happens, but how to sustain it. Earlier in this message, I mentioned something Dr. Robert Lake created. I want to come back to that now, because what he documented maps directly onto everything we have been discussing. Studies measuring brain activity with EEG technology, conducted across multiple research environments, including labs at MIT and Princeton, have documented something striking about the human brain during states of deep insight, genuine creative flow, and what we might call spiritual clarity. What those studies found consistently was a specific brain frequency called gamma. And what made the data remarkable was this: Gamma was the dominant frequency in children almost universally. It was the frequency associated with the rapid, intuitive, almost effortless kind of knowing that children demonstrate before the world interrupts them with its demands and its performance requirements. And then, in most people, it begins to suppress. Beginning around age 7, as the pressures of modern life take hold, gamma activity declines. The researchers studying this gave it a name. They called it the decline effect. And the crucial distinction is this: suppressed is not the same as gone. What has been suppressed can be restored. Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years studying the mechanism of that restoration. What he was looking for was the specific way to guide the human brain back to the frequency it was always designed to operate at. And here is why I am telling you this. The quietness you have been experiencing, the sense of returning to something essential, the clarity that settles in when the noise finally lowers. These are not only spiritual experiences, they have a neurological signature, and gamma is that signature. What you have been feeling is what Dr. Lake spent decades learning to measure and to restore. The chosen one carries this frequency at birth, the depth you have always felt, the sensitivity, the knowing that has lived in you longer than you have had language for it. These are gamma signatures. The years of noise and performance and comparison suppressed the frequency. They did not destroy the capacity, and that is the difference that changes everything. I want to address something before I continue, because some of you have tried things before: meditation apps, online mindfulness courses, spiritual retreats, and you did not find what you were looking for. I understand that. And here is the honest difference at the level of mechanism. Most of what you tried works by asking the brain to shift itself from the inside out. It relies on the brain to generate its own change. Brain entrainment works differently. It works from the outside in. It applies the specific frequency directly to the brain through sound technology. It does not ask the brain to perform. It meets the brain where it is and guides it there. That is a fundamentally different approach. Before I tell you where to find what Dr. Lake built, I want to give you one more piece of evidence. Over 18,300 people have used what he created. Less than 4% have requested a refund. More than 96% chose to continue using it after the full return window closed. That is not just a number. That is a quality signal. It tells you what people who actually experienced it decided after they experienced it. One of those people was a woman, a seeker, 38 years old, who had already gone through everything the spiritual world offered: meditation, yoga, extended retreats. She came to what Dr. Lake built with nothing left to lose. 2 weeks in, she described the change with one word: synchronicities. It felt, she said, like the universe started speaking in a language I could finally understand. Not because the universe changed, because I finally got quiet enough to hear it. The tool that Dr. Robert Lake created is called the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute audio track that uses brain entrainment technology to guide the brain back into the gamma frequency. You listen through headphones with your eyes closed. That is all. No meditation practice required, no mantra, no alarm before sunrise, 7 minutes. And what the technology does is what Dr. Lake spent 30 years learning to do efficiently. It brings the brain back to the frequency it was always designed to operate at. I want to acknowledge something before I tell you the price. $39 means something different to different people, and I would never make light of that. What I want to give you is the honest picture of what this decision actually looks like. A single biofeedback therapy session at a clinic can cost around $150. A weekend mindfulness retreat can run between $400 and $800. A year of a meditation app subscription costs $15 to $20 a month, and none of those are designed to address the gamma frequency directly. What Dr. Robert Lake built was originally priced at $49. For the people receiving this message, the access price is $39. That is not a promotional offer. It reflects the decision Dr. Robert Lake made about who he wants this to reach. You will not find this price anywhere else. When you access the Genius Song at that price, you also receive 4 additional resources included at no added cost. An audio track calibrated for children before the decline effect sets in, valued at $19. The original book that inspired the film, known as The Secret, available for $20. A guided visualization across 4 areas of life, valued at $29. And a daily habits guide for people who have sustained their gamma reactivation over time, valued at $12. That is $80 in additional resources given to you freely with the purchase. And the guarantee is this: if you listen for 90 days and feel nothing shifted, every dollar returns to you. And you keep all 4 resources regardless. Dr. Robert Lake considers your time worth something. Those resources are his acknowledgement of that. Each day the gamma frequency remains suppressed is not a neutral day. It is another day the clarity you have just begun to touch stays slightly out of reach. Another day the prayers you send upward continue to feel like they are hitting a ceiling. Another day, the version of you that the years of formation have been building continues to wait for the tool that was designed to sustain what the formation already started. The version of you that this shift is building toward is not waiting for the right year. It is waiting for the right decision. And a decision does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be real. One thing before you look: there are sites that carry what they claim is the same product. They do not carry the same version of what Dr. Lake built. The only place to access the Genius Song with the full guarantee and the complete resources is through the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. The Genius Song, description and pinned comment below. Only if your spirit says yes. Now, regardless of what you choose, I want to speak something over you that this message has been building toward from the first word. You have been carrying the identity of a wounded healer. The pain you held through the years of formation was never only for you. It was always moving through you toward the people who would need someone who had walked what you walked. That capacity could not have been manufactured. It had to be formed in exactly the way it was formed. You have been carrying the light of a light bearer. Even in the seasons when your own light felt dim, something in the way you showed up changed the quality of the rooms and the relationships around you. You may not have seen it, but it happened, and it was real. You are a hope restorer. There are people in your life who held on a little longer because of something they witnessed in the way you carried yourself. You may never know their names. You may never know the specific moments, but the hope you chose to hold, even when holding it cost you something, moved into the people around you and stayed there. And you are a truth carrier. The reason you could never just pretend, the reason you could never fully perform your way through a version of life that did not match what you knew inside to be real, that is not a flaw. It is a placement. It was given to you because it was needed for what you are going to carry into the years ahead. And I hear the Father speaking something over all of that today. What has been pressed onto my heart to bring to you is this: you are not who the years tried to make you. You are not the person the hard seasons were working to produce. You are who I always saw. Before you had language for it, before you had confirmation, before a single year of formation had shown any visible fruit, I already saw who you were. And today, watching you come back into yourself, watching you finally come home to who you have always been, I wept. Not because you finally became something worth seeing, because you finally believed what I have always known to be true. And that, my child, is everything. Pause, Dries. I want to do one more thing before we close. Not an exercise that requires anything complicated, just a receiving. Wherever you are right now, allow your eyes to soften. And in the space behind them, I want you to picture a room filled with a light that has no visible source, just warm, just present, complete. And in that room, at a distance, there is someone standing, not evaluating you, not holding a list of what you should have done differently, not waiting for you to perform or prove, or earn anything at all. Just watching, with the attentiveness of someone who has seen every single year of your journey and knows, without any remaining question, how it is going to unfold. And on that face is not patience or disappointment or a careful, measured approval. It is joy, a joy that has been building for years, watching you. And today, it overflowed. Let that land somewhere beneath your thinking, not as an idea, as something that is actually real and actually there. Pause 5S. That presence has not moved from you, not in the silent years, not in the hard ones, not in the seasons when you felt most completely alone. It was in the room the entire time. Pause dries. Now, let me close this with you. Release the story that says the years were wasted. You do not need to carry that anymore. Not for another minute. What was built in you in the silence is permanent. You are allowed to put down the narrative that was never true. The years were not wasted. The years were witnessed. Every single one of them. You are not who the wilderness tried to make you. You are the person who walked through all of it and came out carrying something that could only be built by walking through it. You are committed to a road that most people turn back from. You are commissioned for something that required exactly the formation you received, and you are carried, right now, and into what comes next, by a presence that has never looked away from you. Not once. Not in a single season. Not for a single hour. And I hear the Spirit speaking one final word over this moment. These are the words as they were pressed onto my heart to carry to you today. The years were not the waiting room. You were in the room the entire time. I was there. Every morning, every silence, every choice you made when no one but me was watching. And today I cried happy tears. Not because you finally became worthy, because you finally believed you always were. And that, my child, is everything. What comes next in your journey is already being prepared. Step into it, knowing what you now know. If this message found you today, if something in it felt like it was placed specifically for this hour of your life, I want to invite you to type 3 words in the comments right now. I get it. Let that be your declaration. Let the community around you be witnesses to it. If this message served your spirit, honor it. A simple like is the simplest way of saying, I received this. Stay connected, because this is not the last thing heaven has to say to you. And if you know a chosen one who has been walking a long and quiet road, someone whose faithfulness has been real, and whose years of formation have been costly, and who has not yet heard someone tell them that heaven has been watching and that none of it has been wasted, send this to them today. This message was meant to find them too. Until the next message, chosen one. You were not walking alone. You never were.